And good afternoon from Philadelphia.
James coming in from Westchester, New York.
Frank here. Welcome to UFO News Network Sunday. This afternoon, we've got the first of a number of huge shows we've got coming up. We've got Reinerio Hernandez, co-founder of the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, contactee himself. And he's got also going to talk about a survey that the Free Foundation did of more than 3,200 contactees and what that data reveals. Ray, thanks for joining us. Great to have you on. Ray, come in, Ray.
Ray there?
Yes, thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, before we get into the meat and potatoes with Ray, though, normally we can get right into it, but we've actually got quite a lineup of shows, and we want to start plugging them now. This is like the holiday season, and the folks are getting some early Christmas presents from us. The first one is the show here today with Ray, but over the next few weeks, we're going to have next week a Twitter roundtable, a second one of those. Danny Silva is going to be back, James. Is that right?
Correct. That's correct.
Twitter Jay is going to be in on that one. Chris Wolford is going to be in. Chris Wolford is going to be back with us on that one. And in a bit of a coup, as far as I know, his first appearance on a podcast related to UFOs anywhere. Ryan from Post Disclosure World. UFO
AKA
Jesus
UFO
himself.
Jesus.
Yep,
Yes,
UFO Jesus himself is going to be here, so that's going to be a lot of fun. We've got that coming up. We've also got in the works, no specific date set, but some of the attendees are already locked in. They've already agreed to do with this. Sort of an ultimate Rendlesham Forest incident roundtable with John Burroughs, who was there, so he should know a little bit about it. Grant Cameron. We've got a couple more folks. Danny's coming back on that one as well, James?
Correct. Yeah, because he wrote the article on his website, Silver Record, and he did a pretty good overview, and he's going to have some commentary on that too.
Okay, so we've got that. We don't have a date set on that, but that I would think we'll get that put together before the end of the year. Is that about right, James?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So we've got those two shows. They're booked. We've got, let's see, well, we should have at least one other show, I would think, before the end of the year. We've got a few irons in the fire, so those will be good shows. At least one more. So we've got basically four holiday presents for the folks listening at home. And today we don't, we've got one of them already, so let's get that one open because I'm all excited. Ray Hernandez, co-founder of the Free Foundation, involved in putting together the contactee study. Ray, sorry to keep you waiting there, but we got to get our good news out, and the rest of the show is for you to get your good news out. How are you today, Ray?
Very good. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. So, Ray, the Free Foundation was co-founded with you, Rudy Schild, Mary Rodwell, and a name I think most of our listeners will absolutely have heard before, the sixth man to walk on the moon, Edgar Mitchell. Can you tell the folks a little bit about how the Free Foundation got organized in the first place?
Okay. First of all, the name of the organization is the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial and Extraordinary Experiences. Secondly, we are an academic research institute. The vast majority of our board of directors and advisors are PhDs. Most of them are academics. So this is not just Ray Hernandez putting a little dog and pony show here. These are retired PhD academics. We've had a total of 3 PhD physicists, 5 PhD psychologists, a PhD neuroscientist, 2 medical doctors, and 10 other PhDs that are non-academics. For example, like Dr. Claude Swanson has a PhD in physics from Princeton University. Dr. Um, 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 oh my goodness, my Alzheimer's is kicking in. We have Dr. Dean Radin, for example, the chief scientist at the Institute for Noetic Sciences. Dr. Kenneth Ring, for example, the world's most famous academic that's researched near-death experiences. The director of our organization, our academic research institute, is Dr. Rudy Shields. Rudy is a retired professor of astrophysics.
Ray, you dropped off.
Yeah, I don't hear him.
Yeah.
Hello, testing.
Yeah. You dropped off as you were talking about Rudy.
Yes, Rudy is a retired PhD professor of astrophysics at Harvard University. So, and then we have other individuals who are non-academics, but people that have been pioneers in this field that were also a member of our board of directors. Leo Sprinkle has a PhD, was a professor of PhD psychology. Leo is one of the early pioneers in this field. Kathleen Martin, who both of you know, she's probably one of the world's leading authorities on individuals that have seen UFOs and have had contact experiences. Mary Rodwell, she has researched and supported over 3,000 experiencers. Barbara Lamb, again, another person that has worked with thousands of experiencers. And that's just to name a few. Denise Stoner is another person. She has worked with hundreds of experiencers. She's a member of MUFON, their experiencer research team. That's just to give you an idea. Brad Steiger, I mean, the leading writer on the paranormal. He's published more than 200 books on different paranormal related topics, including 20 books dealing with ufology. So just to give you an idea of the type of people that were involved in this academic research study.
Okay, so this is a real all-star team you've got together, but how did it get put together in the first place, and how did Edgar Mitchell get involved?
Well, it was synchronicity. I won't give you the full exact details of how it started, but it pretty much started over a 3-day period where I was put in contact with Mary Rodwell. I was then put in contact with Dr. Rudy Shields, and he in turn put me in contact with Edgar Mitchell, who invited me to his house on day number 3, and it was at the home of Dr. Edgar Mitchell, where the organization was co-founded.
Why did you go into why? Because he already had his Institute of Noetic Sciences together. Why was the need to the feeling that it was required to start a separate organization? Why didn't you just do this work under that already established umbrella?
Yeah, the Institute for Noetic Sciences, they will not touch the topic of UFOs. They will not fully embrace the topic of near-death experiences. They will not fully embrace the topic of out-of-body experiences. Most of their work is in mainstream parapsychology, which is mainly the aspects of ESP, precognition. They do dabble a little bit in energy healing. And that's mainly because these topics are still controversial topics to a certain extent, even within the field of parapsychology, because they will have lost funding for their institute if it was associated with these topics.
Understood. Okay, now let's see.
And also, what a lot of people don't know is that Edgar was also one of the co-founders of this organization called Eternia. And Eternia deals with near-death experiences. So Edgar knew that all of this phenomenon, which we are calling the contact modalities, which are all the different ways that humans are piercing the veil and having contact with non-human intelligence. For example, UFO contact, near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, remote viewing, channeling, people that see and communicate with ghosts and spirits, mystical meditation, hallucinogenic journeys. All of these different ways that people are having communication with non-human intelligence. Edgar, Dr. Rudy Shields, and all of the members of our organization, they know that it's one phenomenon. But science at this point cannot explain it, just like they cannot explain teleportation, the entanglement theory, the slit experiment, the double slit experiment in quantum physics. These are all things that that physics knows about. They've embraced it, but they just don't have the science at this point to put it in a laboratory, to test it out, reduplicate it. But everyone knows in our organization that it's all interrelated, and that was why we decided to do the UFO contact experience for research as the first of many research enterprises in the contact modalities.
And now you've got a survey together, which you've compiled into a book, Beyond UFOs, The Science of Consciousness in Contact with Non-Human Intelligence. One sentence really jumped out at me when I first read it. Basically, it says, this is a direct quote, the true story of UAP-related contact with non-human intelligence was not being accurately presented. Free's work is thus a paradigm-shifting event. Ray, that's a pretty bold statement.
Well, it's accurate. Let me ask you a question. How many academic studies have there been done on people that have seen UFOs and have had contact with non-human intelligence?
I'm assuming yours is the first.
No, you're in this field, right?
Right.
You spoke with hundreds of experiencers. So let me throw the question to you. How many academic studies have there been on this topic?
Maybe you could say Mac's work was an academic study. You looked at it.
Dr. John Mack? Well,
yes.
What he did is he only had 200 individuals that knocked on his office and wanted it to seek therapy. Okay? So that's not really academic research study. That's just 200 people that knocked on his door.
Got it. Understood.
Just like David Jacobs. At most he worked, and he publicly has stated it, 200 people, just like Bud Hopkins. That's it. So these are 200 people that have knocked on your door.
And you have gotten surveys from more than 3,200 individuals from around the world.
Well, actually, it's 4,200 now. Okay. 4,500 individuals from more than 100 countries.
Okay.
And ours was both quantitative and qualitative. We asked over 600 quantitative questions. And again, that was prepared by this team that I told you about. And we also asked 70 open-ended questions. That means we asked 70 specific questions, and we asked the individual to write out responses to these 70 questions. We wound up with more than 10,000 pages of writings. From at that point, the cutoff was April 1st, 2017. So that was 3,200 individuals from over 100 countries. Also, what makes us distinct from any other research study is that, like I told you before, Kathy Martin, maybe 5 years ago, she and Denise Stoner, who both of them worked on this research study, developing questions and reviewing it. They did a statistical study where they only asked 50 questions, okay, and they only had 50 individuals. And these 50 individuals were selected by them. These were basically abductees. Okay, so and then the type of questions that they asked were mainly abduction related type of questions. Now, what we discovered in our survey was that only 1/3 of the people that have seen UFOs and have had contact with non-human intelligence are actually abductees. So that means that her study and some of the other smaller studies that have been done in the past, again, very limited number of participants and questions, they only focused on 1/3 of these individuals. So that's why we made that bold statement that we knew absolutely almost nothing about this phenomenon before our survey. And I still stand by it, and every member of our board still stands by it. And the reason why a lot of our findings contradict much of what is circulating in ufology is because the data was never derived.
Got
okay
it.
We never had that data. And now how the data was administered, we administered it, first of all, we sent emails. Anyone that's ever written a book about the paranormal or UFOs or aliens or abductions, each of these individuals got an email. We also sent it off to different websites that have ufology-related topics. They all received one. We also appeared in over 100 radio shows, the members of board of directors. And this was, one radio show every week at least, over a 3-year period. We also advertised it on Facebook, on over 500 Facebook sites. These included ufology, MUFON, abductions, aliens, the paranormal, any place that there could be someone that might have seen a UFO and have contact with non-human intelligence. That Facebook site got one posting once a week for 3 years announcing our surveys. And that's why we got so many people.
Yeah, and all the CE5 groups.
And all of the CE5 groups, correct, as you mentioned, James. So if someone had these experiences, they knew about our survey. Now, our survey took forever to complete. That was the major complaint by so many people. It just took so long to do because we had so many questions. The phase 3 questions, these open-ended questions, it took people days to complete these questions. Sure. Even the phase 2, you could not do that at one sitting. You had to do it over several days because it literally, the average was anywhere from between 2 to 5 hours to complete. Because we even had another instrument that measured how long it took the people to complete it. So this was a comprehensive survey developed and supervised by both academics and non-academics that were experts in this field. It was done in a neutral setting. The questions that we asked were abduction-related questions, non-abduction-related questions, for the good, the bad, and the ugly, okay? So it wasn't biased in any way. If someone had a negative experience, they had numerous opportunities to talk about that negative experience in multiple sets of questions. So for the first time, we're able to find out what the hell is really going on with this phenomenon. And that's why our study is so important. And yet the field of mainstream ufology has not recognized this. They're having, all of these people invited to these UFO conferences all over the world. And these people are not even experiencers, so many of these people. And the stories that they're telling have nothing to do with what these 4,200 people have told us. It just seems like totally out of place. And yet these people are not researchers. They have no data, and they have nothing to back up the statements that they make. So our approach is an academic approach, a scientific approach, comprehensive approach based upon data from real experiencers. Now, another issue, people are saying, oh, people can make up, they can lie, whatever, Well, if someone is going to be lying and making stuff up, they would have had to spend at least 8 hours to do these surveys, okay? Now, who the hell is going to be going out of their way to lie and to deceive if they got to spend 8 hours doing this? Okay, that's number one. Secondly, we've had just in the English language 4,200 people. So even if 10% of the people were lying, that's 420 people.
Yeah, you've got a big enough universe that it's going to sort of wash that out.
Exactly. And you're not going to have 420 people lying. Maybe 1%, maybe 42. Okay. So, but then we also did in our book, as you saw in the very beginning, we did a statistical analysis per country. We grouped the U.S. as one category, Canada as another one, Australia and New Zealand as another one. We had the UK as a separate group, and mainland Europe. And what we discovered when we put all of the different responses to the questions in these different country groups, that the percentage variance in how they responded to the questions did not deviate more than 10 percentage points. Okay, it was consistent no matter what country they were from, what area. So that means that people were answering the same way to the same question all over the world. And that's another tool to test whether our statistical study was valid or not.
And that also kind of points into the direction that this phenomenon or these phenomena are transcultural. They transcend all cultures.
Correct. And languages, because we did it in multiple languages.
Yeah.
In Spanish, we have almost 850 people that took our surveys. And for them, very consistent to the English language. It's actually more positive, much more positive experiences in the Spanish language. A couple of other things I want to note is that our organization, just for some of your listeners that are out there, we are not a ufology organization. We have zero interest in nuts and bolts ufology, reviewing photos, videos, medals of UAPs, conspiracy theories, secret space program. A question I want to throw to both of you. Both of you have been following ufology for many years now. Over the last 70 years, what have we learned from ufology?
Well, as what you can say from Jacques Vallée will say is that we've discovered that ufology has no ontology.
Okay.
And it's mostly grounded in ideology. I'm just pointing that out as a joke. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Myself, I think there's something there. I do like the cases. I do like the nuts and bolts cases that are backed up, where the witnesses are backed up by radar. I like those cases. I think they're important cases too.
Okay.
But I like it all. I think it's all
so
important.
we know UFOs exist. If you're an experiencer or if you've seen UFOs yourself, you know they exist. Okay. You know that there are videos out there. You know there are photos out there. Some of you might have even taken photos. Okay. Outside of that, I mean, what else have we learned? Now, compare that with what we've learned from the data from our book. Okay?
Yeah. And no, yes. I was going to say, and John Alexander, he also wrote your book, correct?
He wrote one of the chapters in our book. Now, what people don't know about Dr. Alexander is that he wrote his PhD dissertation on near-death experiences. His dissertation advisor was Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, okay? He also, after Kenneth Ring founded it, with Raymond Moody and this other individual, he became the president of the International Association of Near-Death Studies. He also spent several months with Robert Monroe learning how to do out-of-body experiences. Yeah, he also worked for many, many months with remote viewers. He knows all of the major remote viewers by first-name basis, you know, how to do remote viewing. He learned how to do it. He's also gone to all the continents to work with shamans. I don't think he'll admit it, but I know his wife has experimented with ayahuasca. They've been there in mushroom ceremonies, ayahuasca ceremonies. He also has visited numerous times John of God in Brazil, where all these healings have taken place. Okay, so here is the man that knows about the contact modalities. He knows that it's all interrelated, and that's what he wrote about in our chapter. Okay.
Yeah, and you know, he has a book called Reality Denied, and in the book he kind of goes over a lot. He goes, you know, from everything from psychic phenomenon, UAP, and all these different experiences. There's a chapter where he's out with Chris Bledsoe, and Chris Bledsoe says, "Hey, wait, I think they're here." And they look up, and boom, you know, there's a craft right there. And, you know, to Chris Bledsoe and John Alexander's credit. The reason I brought John Alexander up in this context was that And ufology, the point you're making is we haven't really found out too much, but a lot of the good data is kind of tucked away, so to speak. Bigelow might be have some of it, and some of it were in those secret but not classified programs like ATIP and OSAP. He was kind of in those circles, so he was exposed to some of the actual research that's going on that really hasn't come out too publicly, like with NIDS and BASS.
Well, I talked to him, quite frequently. I use him to give me ideas about what other researchers are out there. Because what we're trying to do in Free for our next volume, or volume 2, is we're going to try to write a book that's a theoretical book about the contact modalities. And the question that we're asking is, what is the relationship between consciousness, cosmology, which is the true nature of our universe, and contact with non-human intelligence via the contact modalities? And he's one of the few people that actually understands it, just like members of our board of directors, like Rudy Shields and Edgar Mitchell, Mary Rodwell, Kathy Martin, who just came out of the closet at our Free conference several months ago as a full-blown experiencer. And she's had many experiences through the contact modalities. And so what he told me, Ray, was that, Ray, most of the individuals that he's spoken with, the folks in the Parapsychological Association, he's also associated with the Society for Scientific Exploration. And they're like the premier scientific organization that's focusing on alternative theories, on the paranormal, on consciousness, on parapsychology, on ufology, etc. As a matter of fact, Jacques Vallée was one of the keynote speakers at their last event, as well as the Parapsychological Association. It was Jacques Vallée. Okay.
Yeah.
And so our focus in our organization, we're not a nuts and bolts ufology organization. Our focus is on consciousness. Okay, because that's the key to understanding this phenomenon. What is the nature of our reality by undertaking cross-comparative research of individuals that are having contact with non-human intelligence via the contact modalities? And what our organization, not just Ray Hernandez, this is all of these people in our organization, we hypothesize that we are interacting with non-human intelligence via various paranormal modalities, and that all of these contact modalities is in fact one phenomenon, and that consciousness is the glue that unifies the contact modalities. And again, Edgar knew about it. Rudy knew about it. Dr. Dean Radin knows about it. Dr. Claude Swanson, the PhD physicist from Princeton, who wrote a book 20 years ago titled The Synchronized Universe. Dr. Kenneth Ring knows about it. Brad Steiger knew about it. And many, many other individuals. But mainstream ufology is still, and also Jacques Vallée knows about it. Okay, but we're still stuck in this materialist mindset of mainstream ufology. And what we think is that the data from our book can begin to point a direction towards a different direction, a different paradigm. And that is a non-materialist paradigm of non-locality. What does non-locality mean? Okay, it means that consciousness is independent of the brain, that when individuals are having these experiences through the contact modalities, the vast majority of these are at an arena that's independent of our 3D reality. Okay, for example, we've had almost double the number of individuals that were taken to what I call a matrix reality. Okay, and that's defined as a non-three-dimensional reality where your consciousness is brought to that location. Okay, like for example, have you guys seen the movie Contact with Jodie Foster?
Oh yes,
of course.
Okay, all right, very, very well known. And also like the Matrix movies. Okay, where
Great movies. Great movies.
your consciousness are taken out and you're brought to another reality. Okay, we've had almost double the number of people that have had that experience than people that have had an abduction. Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
Absolutely.
does mainstream ufology know about that? No. But the researchers in the field, Leo Sprinkle, Barbara Lamb, okay, Denise Stoner, Mary Rodwell, Kathy Martin, okay, all of these people that have been working with experiencers for many, many years, they know that. David Jacobs and Bud Hopkins never accepted that, because any time anyone approached them with a positive experience, they said, well, why don't you go to see Leo Sprinkle? Okay, because I can't help you. Okay, even Mike Cleveland discussed that publicly. Reverend Michael Carter discussed that publicly. I've spoken with 3 or 4 people that had gone to Bud Hopkins, and he basically told them, look, I can't work with you because I don't accept that, you know? And so, and let alone people being brought to this matrix reality, they said, look, that's not within my paradigm. I don't accept it. I cannot work with you. And so a lot of that literature never got publicized because the paradigm was established by people, by those individuals. You look at Whitley Strieber when he first started off, okay? Very, very similar to the Bud Hopkins, David Jacobs paradigm, okay? But then over time, his experiences changed, just like the vast majority of the people in our surveys, okay? It became more positive. Instead of dealing with the grays, he began associating with human-looking beings, okay? With energy beings, with ghost and spirit type of beings, and no longer with these grays. That's the same pattern that we found out in our research study. And a subsequent result from that was that the experiences became more positive. Now, he's all love and light, okay?
Yeah.
The man that made famous, you know, anal probes, okay, and just the sheer fright of contact with aliens, okay. Now he's the total opposite of it. Now he gives thanks to them for illuminating his life. Okay, those are the same findings that we have in our research study. But mainstream ufology, they will not accept Whitley Strieber, but they did embrace him when he first began, okay?
Yeah.
Jacques Vallée, when he first started publishing these things, they all fully embraced him. But now that Vallée is talking about non-extraterrestrial definitions of what might be going on, consciousness-related definitions, okay, all of a sudden, he won't go to these ufology conferences because he says they're all filled with kooks. Okay,
yeah.
And that's not the direction that ufology needs to go to. So it totally is disassociated with these people, and so what we're trying to do in our organization is we're trying for the first time ever, okay, is to bring data of the experiencer to this phenomenon, data grounded in science and in academic research. And what it's demonstrating is that much of what's been circulating in mainstream ufology is totally off.
Now, Ray, how did
you know?
Oh, go ahead, James.
No, go ahead, Frank. Go ahead.
Ray, how did you get involved in all this in the first place? You sound like you're pretty driven for getting this information out, and the question is obviously, how come?
Well, I don't want to go into too much details because it'll take forever. But basically, I have an academic background. I went to Cornell for a master's. I went to University of California, Berkeley for a PhD. That's the university that has the most Nobel Prize winners in the world. And I completed all of my coursework, all of my written and oral exams, and I was on my way to writing my dissertation when my ex-wife got a brain aneurysm, and I had a family to feed, and I had to quit writing my dissertation and take 2 full-time jobs. So I was never able to get my PhD. I then later on in life became an attorney. And that's my profession now. So, but I did teach for 6 years as an attorney at the New School for Social Research and at the City University of New York. But my mindset is still as an academic. So I was a total rationalist, atheist, materialist until March 4th of 2012. And I'll just be very, very brief. Basically, this energy being appeared in my living room took my wife and my dog into some other type of location. My wife has 45 minutes of missing time. Our dog, we were going to be euthanizing later that afternoon. When my dog reappeared with my wife right in front of me, the dog was completely healed. Completely healed. Before, she was totally paralyzed. And then 2 months later, my wife saw a big, gigantic UFO right outside her house. I call them UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon. And then my wife went to Mexico for a month, and there she called down without even knowing the terminology or even knowing that some people use protocols. No, she was just praying to see her angels again. And lo and behold, poof, these ships would appear, sometimes very close up. And one time she saw 3 human-looking beings, 7 to 8 feet tall, with bald heads, with white monk's robes that floated right in front of her. So she had been having these experiences in Mexico, and she comes back. And then I again, without not knowing the terminology or any protocols, I just was outside one night waiting for a friend, and I wanted to see, this non-human intelligence that had been interacting with my wife, and I wanted to give them thanks for healing our dog. And in the very beginning, I wasn't very sincere, but then I became very, very sincere. And within 15 minutes, this football stadium size object appears right on top of my next door neighbor's house. It was like 5 feet from his roof and 30 feet away from me. And then there was telepathic communication that took place. Eventually, my daughter was with me for 45 minutes, and these 3 adult friends. And then it was after that incident that then it was like an explosion of the contact modalities with me, in terms of out-of-body experiences, near-death related type of experiences, telepathic communication, downloads of science and physics. Very similar to what you've heard from Chris Bledsoe and several other individuals. And that lasted for like an additional 2 years. And so what I did is immediately after it first started, I thought it was paranormal related. So not knowing anything about these topics, I went to the internet. And all it did was just confuse me. 2 months afterwards, I then realized, 2 months later, then realized that this might be UFO related, because my wife had seen that huge object outside her house. She goes, "Oh, I saw my angels last night. They came a beautiful angelic craft with stained glass windows, just like our church, So I asked her to draw it. What she drew was a big, gigantic Goodyear blimp with lights on the edges, these colorful lights. And so, and then I began to go into UFOs. I bought tons of books. I was hooked to all the different, websites and YouTube videos. And all that did was just confuse me more, because all these folks were contradicting each other. That's number one. And then secondly, half of these folks considered themselves experts on the field, and they're the only ones that had the answers, And so, but yet when I did an academic literature review of the phenomenon, what I realized, it was almost zippo, almost nothing was written about it academically. You just had 100 people going to these lecture circuits, just talking about what they had spoken to other experiencers. And so I quickly realized that this field, while they might have an understanding of what they think might be going on, we really don't know, because the formal research, comprehensive research, had never been done before.
And then at some point, you started contacting people, and word got to Dr. Mitchell, and then he contacted you.
No, it was a little bit more interesting than that. But I'd rather not get into it, because once you tell people how it really went down, then you start being attacked for making things up and losing credibility. So, I really don't want to go there. But if you read the prelude to the book, the free book, the detail of how Free got started is in there.
Got it. Okay. So and basically, the proof is in the pudding. You've got the data, you've got the survey done, at least phase 1 and 2 of it. And the big takeaway really is 2/3, 66% came away with a positive result from the experience. 29 neutral. I guess it's kind of hard to figure out how you could have an experience like that and have it be neutral. But really, 95% of the people are not negative. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, we asked that question. Let me look at that pie chart. We asked that question, how would you describe your experiences? Okay. Was it positive, negative, or neutral? And this was a forced choice response. So I mean, people had to answer this in order to move forward. Okay. And what they answered was that 66% said it was positive, neutral was 29%, and negative was 5%. But we also asked that question in more than 20 different ways. Okay. Let me just go over the four major findings very, very briefly. Okay. Number one, contact was overwhelmingly positive. That's number one. Number two, contact resulted in a positive transformation of the experiencer, of their psychological profile of who they are. Okay. Number three, contact was primarily not physical. It was primarily paranormal. And what I mean by that is that, okay, you might have seen a couple of UFOs. You might have had a being or two, appear in your living room, that sort of thing. But once you're talking about these paranormal experiences, it just overwhelmed your life. If you talk to Chris Bledsoe, he would tell you the same thing. Okay, he had these physical experiences, and some of them continue here and there, mainly through seeing orbs and seeing some objects in the sky. But over the last 10 years, it's been, numerous hundreds, thousands of paranormal experiences. Okay. That's what I mean by that topic area. And that's my case and everyone else's cases that took our survey. So that's number three. It's primarily a paranormal and not a physical experience. Number four, and this is follows Jacques Vallée, Alan Hynek, John Mack, and all of the UFO researchers that are in our organization, that contact involves a manipulation of space-time.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. And what this in turn leads to the possibility that it's much more complicated than just extraterrestrial nuts and bolts. Okay. And that quite possibly these experiences might be interdimensional. Okay. With non-human intelligence popping in out of space-time, being able to manipulate space-time. For example, taking you. Okay, so many people have been taken out of where they were, their 3D reality. They thought that they were somewhere else, for a half an hour, 20 minutes, or a couple hours, but yet they get brought back to the same radio interview that they were listening to in their car. And that was my situation. That's how Free got started, where you're taken out from a 3D reality. In my case, it was the middle of a traffic jam. And then you get brought into a matrix reality where you're given instructions and shown information. And in my case, was about the contact modalities. And then, poof, you're popped in without missing a beat of the radio interview. Okay. So this is not just 3D extraterrestrial stuff that is mainly circulating in mainstream ufology. So those are the four major findings. Now, in terms of the positive aspects, okay, as I said before, we asked that question numerous times. Let me go over some of these questions. Do you want your ET contact experiences to stop? Okay, 84% said no. Do you believe that ETs with or non-human intelligence are bad or malevolent? Only 9.7% said yes. Okay. We asked, have they tried to help you? 62% said yes. These beings have tried to help me. 66% have felt love in front of these non-human intelligence. Even when we looked at the specific types of beings, the physical beings, okay, because part of the contact was physical and part was non-physical, but even the physical beings that we're seeing, okay, the number one type of being was not the small grays, the short grays. The number one was the energy being at 55%. Human-looking beings were number two at 52%. The short grays were number three at 51%. The ghost and spirit form, that's at 47%. Okay, and then the tall grays were at 33%. And then there were other categories, but I'm going to skip
Yeah,
over this.
just to jump in really quick, with numbers like that, you're talking, since all those numbers add up to more than 100%, you've got a few people in there that have seen multiple types of beings.
Yes, the vast majority of people have seen multiple types of beings, the vast majority. I mean, if you just seen one type of being, that's a rarity. Like in my case, I only saw an energy being. I didn't see anything else. And maybe a human-looking being, but that'll be a story for another day. Now, let me focus on the negative experiences, okay? For the energy being, only 7% said it was negative. For the human-looking being, only 5% was negative. Now, what would you guess was the negative rate for the evil dreaded short grays that you always see on the internet, carving people up with little knives and taking their ovaries out and stuff like that, you know? So for the short grays, what percentage would you think stated that it was mainly negative?
Based on what you set up to now, I would say 10% roughly.
Oh, well, you're very close. It's 11%.
Okay.
Okay. Now, this is not 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people. This is 751 people. Okay, that had experienced with short grays. Now it's over 1,000, 1,100 for the people who have taken our survey. So this is not just a little tiny sample. Okay. And what they're saying is now more than 1,000 people, 11% said it was mainly negative. That's it. Okay. Yeah. Now the evil dreaded reptilians. Okay. I mean the kind that will rape your wife and eat your children. Okay, the ones that President Obama was an evil reptilian and you know that sees on the internet all the time that you see, right? Well,
they're ruling the world.
Okay, they're ruling the world. Okay, these reptilians. Okay, 25% of the people that took our survey at that time was 368 people. Now it's more than 500 said that they have had experiences with reptilians. Okay, 25%. That's not a small number. That's a lot of people. Okay. Now, the kinds that rape your wife and eat your children, how many do you think people said that it was negative?
You just said about 25%.
No, that was how many people saw it.
Oh, okay.
25% of the study. Yeah.
Okay, so 100% of that 25%, what percentage? It'd be higher than the grays, I would guess, maybe 15 to 20.
Okay, well, it's 23%.
23%. Okay.
Said that their experiences were mainly negative. Now, when we went to phase three was people wrote out the details of their experiences. And we looked at the people that had reptilian type of experiences. The vast majority of them, over 95% of those people, stated that it was negative because of what it looked like, not because of what it did.
Yeah.
Okay? Because if you have in front of you a being that's 7 to 8 feet tall, that's 500 pounds. It's got a crocodile head and a long tail, okay? And is looking right at you a couple of feet away from you. You're going to be defecating in your pants.
Yeah.
Okay? It's just natural. And for a lot of people, they might have had that experience once. Okay? So that trauma still remains with a lot of people. Okay? And again, that's not information that's circulating in ufology, because most of the people think that these experiences were totally negative, when in fact 60% it was neutral. What these beings most of the time did was just stay in front of you and just look at you, and you looked at them, and all of a sudden it would phase out of reality. Okay. Yeah. And that's we also asked the question, as I've said before, if you could stop your experiences, would you? Okay, 84% no. So if these beings were just so evil, so dreaded, so horrible, why did the 84% said keep it coming? Okay, so we asked that question in like 20 different ways. Okay, not just one different way. Now, let's look at the positive transformation. Okay, overall, between 75 to 85%, because we asked more than 60 questions on this topic area. Individuals underwent a profound psychological profile change for the positive. Okay, between 73 to 85%, depending on the question. Now, let me go over the questions. The questions were, since I first became interested in my UFO experiences, Okay. And then we had the specific question. And then I said, did it strongly increase, increase somewhat, had not changed, decreased somewhat, or strongly decreased? Now, let's look at what strongly decreased was and increased somewhat. Okay. The categories that increased. Okay. My desire to help others, my compassion for others, my appreciation of the ordinary things of life, my sensitivity to the suffering of others. Okay, my concern with spiritual matters, my desire to achieve a higher state of consciousness, my appreciation of nature, my spiritual feelings, my concern with the welfare of planet Earth, my understanding of what life is all about, my personal sense of purpose, my concern with ecological matters. All of these were above 80%. Okay,
Yeah.
in terms of increased. Okay, now let's look at what decreased. Okay. Very interesting what decreased. My concern with material things of life. All of a sudden, material things are not important to you. My interest in organized religion, again, decreased. Why? Because you moved in the direction of spirituality instead of organized religion. My competitive tendencies. All of a sudden, you care about others, not squashing other people. My fear of death. Why? Because now you become more spiritual. You know that you're an eternal spiritual being. Okay. Fear of death was decreased by 73%. My desire to become a well-known person. Okay. All of a sudden, that's not important anymore. Okay. So my question is, if almost 85% of the people that took our surveys underwent this profound psychological transformation, okay, my perspective is, these beings, why don't you do it to everyone in the world? Why don't you have contact with everyone? Because the person that's evolved from the contact experience is a person that I would want as a friend, a neighbor, my ally. Okay? Instead of human beings killing off 100 million people in the last century, maybe that could have been avoided if they interacted with everyone. Now, don't you find that finding important? Much more important than just the chemical analysis of this new metal alloy that came from a ship? Why are people talking about this metal alloy that these CIA agents have? Okay, and why they're not talking about this research study that talks about how people have been totally transformed? Why are they talking about a video that was circulated, that was put out, okay, and not about the whole aspect that this phenomenon is mainly paranormal? It's not physical.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to cover them all,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to lend commentary on that, saying that, Ray, for us, people who have been affected by the contact experience, I want to say sometimes you almost take for granted our experience, not in an overt way, but it's easy for us to make that leap and understand that there's deeper foundation of truth, and that's really where the transformation comes from.
Yeah.
But some of these people, that analysis of materials, that's their kick in the behind to say, oh wait, hold on, wait, maybe there is something, because that the contact experience is the paradigm shift. That's the cosmic eye opener. That's really gonna, and Dr. John Mack had comments on that, is the passport to the cosmos.
Yeah,
when
exactly.
you have one of these experiences, you don't just have a UFO sighting. First of all, number one, is that sighting random? Probably not. Number two, you're opened up to the contact modalities now.
Yes.
So whether whether you have the near-death experience first, and then the UFO sighting, and then the psychic phenomenon experience, what you're gonna have all these. So it's not just like you're gonna have one or the other. So it's kind of easy. It's easy for us. So I still have a deep compassion for people who need to see these metal analyses, because I know that they need that for a reason. They've been conditioned, they've been brought up to believe. I don't hold that against them. So I think the best thing we can do is continue doing this work,
is to keep plugging away.
Yeah, but also I still have a great appreciation for people working on the materialistic end, because honestly, we need that. We need everything that we can get.
Yeah,
To be
it's
honest.
just as you know, James. If you are an experiencer, for example, and here you are, you're meditating, calling down to see non-human intelligence, and then 15 minutes later it shows up. Okay, you know that this materialist paradigm
I know
is not the
it's
answer.
like, okay, let's get on with it already.
Yeah, let's get
Yeah,
on
it's
with it.
not.
We're like wasting
But
time,
yeah, but you know what? Some people need that. But also, I mean, I find it fascinating myself. And I think even, we have this consciousness aspect and the consciousness end of this stuff, which is really the heart of everything.
Yeah, it's the heart of it all. Yeah.
And I have a strong belief that, consciousness, it plays out in its own way in maybe some kind of pattern or design or intelligence, and that everything, even the deepest parts of consciousness and manifestation and how everything unfolds, there's like there's a scientific method to that, and I think that's still almost just as important.
Yeah, well, that's what we're going to be talking about in our volume 2, and hopefully I'll have some time in the show to be able to focus on that, because that's where the field needs to move towards. But let me just finish. I went over the positive aspects, I went over the transformational aspects, and let me go over the paranormal aspects. For example, we've had. Let me go over some of these questions here. Okay. We asked, goodness, about 50 questions that dealt with paranormal aspects of the phenomenon. Okay. Um, and again, these are mind-blowing responses, okay, for people that are in this field, the mainstream field, okay. But the research, they know that this is taking place, okay. For example, 80%, 8 out of 10 of these individuals that took our survey have stated they've had an out-of-body experience. Okay, 37% had a near-death experience. Medical healings, and that's the chapter in our book that Dr. Joseph Burks wrote with Preston Dennett. Okay, 50%. 50% of the people stated that they or a member of their family have had a medical healing by non-human intelligence. Okay, the question of did you experience involve some type of telepathic communication or thought transference or direct knowing being given to you by non-human intelligence? 78%. It's almost 8 out of 10 people. And if you do field contact work, you get that all the time. Oh, they just gave this thought to me, or I've gotten this information, and a lot of it was very direct, like either a voice or information or a thought that was put right into you. As I said before, 50% of these individuals have been brought to a matrix reality. 50%. Okay. 66% have had a past life memory. The people that have seen a ghost or a spirit, 76%, almost 3/4 of the people, 3 out of 4 people have seen a ghost or a spirit. Okay. 46% of these individuals have received a glimpse of heaven, or what might be called the spirit world. Seen, not via a picture, not via photo, but direct physically, seen a small colored orb, 67%. Okay, 2 out of 3 people. Objects mysteriously appear right in front of you. And those are called apports in the parapsychology field. Okay, 25%, 1 out of 4 people have had objects mysteriously appear right in front of them. Okay, objects that have fallen or suddenly moved around your house without any reasonable explanation, 61%. Individuals that can see energy or auras around other people, 74%. And that's very common with both people that came back from a near-death experience and people that came back from these matrix realities. Okay, they're able to see energy auras. They become energy healers. Total transformation. 49% of these people have seen their bodies out in space, leaving Earth. All of a sudden, you're looking at the Earth and you're like flying away from it. Half the people, okay? 47% have met and conversed with a deceased person, okay? 29% have channeled a non-human intelligence. 60% have repeatedly experienced objects moving in their home. 47% have seen what can be considered shadow people in their homes. And that's beings that look cloudy, human-like, that streak across their home. I remember speaking to Chris and his wife, and they've seen it.
Yeah, of
I,
course.
I've seen it in my house as well. The matter of time, one time we were in a Skype call that had a camera, and we had one lady from Canada and another lady. They were both volunteers for our support group, and one of the ladies shouted out and started freaking out. You know, Ray, what the hell is that? Because this shadow person just went right behind me and went right through the glass door. Okay. And so I said, that's just a shadow person. Don't worry about it. You know, everything is cool. You know, don't freak out. You know, and now in terms of physically seen an orb, 66% of the people that have seen the orb said it was inside their home. Okay, 46% saw the orb go through an object such as a wall, and 82% believe that these orbs are conscious intelligence. And that's just an example, what I'm telling you, of how the vast majority of these experiences are primarily paranormal, because they don't accrue once, they accrue multiple times. Like when you're seeing orbs, you're seeing these orbs tons of times. When you're getting telepathic communications, it's not just once, it's tons of times, okay? The out-of-body experiences, once you've had contact with non-human intelligence, all of a sudden, you begin having OBEs, not once, but many times. Okay. The other thing is we can go over a whole lot of thematic topic areas. You guys let me know what you're interested. One thematic topic area is what has been the information that they've received from non-human intelligence. We even have a whole section on the physical experiences, the abduction type of experiences. We have another question on series of questions related to experiences on board a UFO. Let me see. We have.
Well, yeah, I'm really curious about what the folks are getting in terms of. You were talking about some downloads in the area of science and technology. Is anything in that information look interesting?
Yes, let me look at that. The information that's received. We've had 80% of the people have received direct communications from non-human intelligence. Let me see in terms of the science-related type of stuff. Well, just 75% was in their native language, 61%, 54% were spiritual messages, 54% were messages of love and oneness, 45% were regarding humanity's behavior. Environmental messages was 39%, science and physics related messages and technology, 42%, very large number, were science and physics related messages. Messages regarding the parallel universes, the multiverse, 31%. Messages about God or a universal creator, 31%. About the death process, 30% were told about what death is like. The concept of time, 30%. Let me see their mission here on Earth, 29%. Did the ETs provide you with any information about science topic that was not physics related? So it was 28%. So majority of the science related type of questions were physics related. That was 42% involved, science and physics. Now to those, 28% were science related, but they did not deal with physics. Reincarnation, 26% were told about reincarnation. An agreement, okay, with these beings, 26%. Okay. On and on and on. Those were just some of the type of questions that were asked.
Well,
we
Ray,
also, yeah.
If you don't mind me interrupting you, I just wanted to, obviously you've had your own experiences, so you have a kind of a strong footing in this. But going from that point, from when you had your own experience, ton of experiences, obviously, to the academic study. What was one of the most interesting things or surprising things that you found or discovered, after seeing so many of these results?
Well, it wasn't just me. We're talking about the whole team. Okay.
Yeah,
we're
everybody.
Yeah, we're talking about, Kathy Martin, that's been this for 30 years, Mary Rodwell for more than 30 years, Leo Sprinkle, 50 years. Okay. They knew that much of this had been going on, but they never had the data. Okay. For example, they were totally surprised that 80% were having out-of-body experiences. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
They were totally surprised that 50% had medical healings. I mean, you hear these stories, and Preston Dennett wrote a book 20 years ago titled UFO Healings, and that was 200 cases. And but you didn't know it was so large. It was like half the people. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, the near death experiences. We know that a lot of experiencers had near death experiences, but we didn't know it was 37%. But what we found out was that the NDE for many people was like a triggering mechanism. It's
Oh
like
yeah.
after after the NDE, all of a sudden they started to see craft. You know.
Yeah.
So my question is, okay, all of these materialists, they said that has nothing to do with this. You know, seeing a physical craft and near-death experiences, you're having a life review that has nothing to do with a physical gray taking out your ovaries. Okay,
Yeah.
and and so the data is telling us, you know, otherwise. Now, if we would have known this stuff, we would have added a lot of additional questions. And, for example, do additional questions regarding in terms of when did the near-death experiences start? When did you first see the UFO? Did your the UFO contact experiences increase, and how much did it increase after an NDE? Okay, but these are the issues that we found out subsequently afterwards. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
But we were able to find out a lot of this through the writings in phase 3. But again, we're not able to document the numbers. But we just know that it's a trigger, that the ND has been a trigger. But many of the researchers knew that NDs were triggers, but they were never able to quantify. So a lot of the paranormal stuff, we knew that it was, the other thing, the matrix reality. Okay, we had no idea that being brought to the matrix reality was almost double the number of people that have had abductions, because most of these folks they meet people regarding an abduction. They're petrified, they're scared, so they go to Mary Rodwell or they go to Denise Stoner, and they talk about it and what's circulating on the internet. And again, this is what the internet does. You have an experience, and then you go to the internet for answers. Okay, after you read 100 abduction stories, and you go to David Jacobs, okay, David Jacobs might lead you in a certain direction. All of a sudden, you're talking about abduction this, abduction that, abduction everything. Okay, so by actually going to the internet for a lot of people does a lot of disservice. Okay, now what's totally struck the number of all of our research was how many people actually were brought to this matrix reality. This again is we did the cutoff at 3,200, but now we have more than 4,500 people that have answered our surveys. So this was as of April of 2017, because that's when we began to publicize our data. Once we publicized our data, then we cut down, you know, we shut off the survey. I mean, people were still answering their surveys, but we didn't count it. Okay. Now, as of that time, we had 489 people that had abduction-related experiences, and that's a forced taking without their consent. But we had 749 people that were brought to these matrix realities. Okay, what we discovered was that only 1/3 of the people had an abduction, and yet 2/3 did not have an abduction. So that means that all these previous abduction-related studies, they were totally missed. What we found out that the type of beings that people were interacting with in these matrix type of realities was primarily the energy being and the human looking being. And for 2/3 of these people, their consciousness was separated from their body. Okay, so it wasn't like their body was taken; it was their consciousness was taken. Okay, and again, what we don't understand is whether time was stopped for all the people all around you. Like, for example, in that traffic jam that I was in my car. Okay, maybe time stopped for everybody else. And they took my body out or my consciousness out or both, you know, and then they brought me back, you know, because time had stopped. You know, we read hundreds of these types of stories, you know, where they were taken out, and again, it was outside of space-time. Now, in this matrix reality, 56% stated that their thoughts were sped up. 75% stated that their senses were more vivid than usual. 49% stated that in this reality, time stopped or was slowed down, significantly slowed down. 55% felt that they were united or one with the world. 38% stated that they suddenly seemed to understand everything about the universe. Okay, and that's what happened to Edgar Mitchell. Okay, he had an experience where all of a sudden he had
Ray, you're dropping off.
Ray.
Ray, you dropped off.
Hello.
Yeah, you dropped off as you were talking about Edgar Mitchell's experience.
You cut
Okay,
out,
there
yeah.
he goes. Edgar Mitchell, Dr. Mitchell. Yes, that he had his own experience out in space, where he was given all knowledge, that we are all united, that we're all one. Okay, and that's what led him to found the Institute for Noetic Sciences, because he wanted to find out what happened to him. And what he realized later, after inquiring with so many individuals, was that he had a samadhi experience, and that was when you're given universal knowledge. And in this matrix reality, 83% stated that this experience was very, very real, just as, quote unquote, just as real or normal as speaking with a family member next to you. Okay, so and in this matrix reality, the human-looking being was the number one type of being. The ghost and spirit type of beings and the energy beings were the main beings in this. Also, the spirit world and spirituality. That's another major topic that mainstream ufology does not talk about. 97% believe that non-human intelligence can travel to other dimensions. 91% believe that there's a grand plan in motion and that experiences are part of it. 89% believe that there is a connection between non-human intelligence and the paranormal. 83% said that there's a connection between non-human intelligence and the spirit world. Okay. Now, what the beings told them. Okay. 31% were given a message about God. 30% were told about the death process and the spirit world. 26% were given a message about reincarnation. 25% were told about their mission here on Earth. 25% were shown how to do energy work. 24% were told by non-human intelligence about their past life. Now, all this in terms of the spirituality aspects of this phenomenon and the matrix reality of this phenomenon leads me to what you had mentioned. Dr. John Mack, in his book, Passport to the Cosmos, Human Transformation and Alien Encounters, he stated in his book, quote, "People know their experiences and what they have undergone does not fit with the prevailing mechanistic worldview. Large percentages of people seem to know there is an unseen world or hidden dimensions of reality." Okay, and that's where mainstream ufology needs to go to. Okay, it needs to follow to where Dr. John Mack was going towards before he was killed, before his time. But that's where he was going. Dr. Rudy Shields was a very, very dear friend of Dr. John Mack. Okay, Edgar Mitchell also knew Dr. Mack very well. Dennis Briefer, who's a member of our board of directors, was the director of the John Mack Institute. Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell, a medical doctor and an author on ESP, and a scholar from the Parapsychological Association. She was also a professor at Harvard Medical School when Dr. Mack was there. Okay, she's also a counselor to us. Okay, they all knew that Dr. Mack was heading in the direction that we took our free study. And again, if people want to know more about our research, we have an 820-page academic book titled, you can get it on Amazon. It's titled Beyond UFOs: The Science of Consciousness and Contact with Non-Human Intelligence. And if you send an email to us, I will send to you for free Chapter 1 and various other parts of our book, a total of 160 pages. And our email is info@experiencer.org, info@experiencer.org. And our website is experiencer.org.
Yeah, and
Okay.
Ray, I'm gonna link everything, all those links in the description, so people who are interested, just look in the description, and I'm going to post all the links that Ray Hernandez here is discussing.
Yeah,
Thank you.
just real quick, Ray. You've got this treasure trove of data. You're, it raises, it answers a few questions, but it raises a few more. What's next for the free organization?
Okay, we've got two projects that we want to undertake. One is the reason why we undertook this research on UFO contactees was that we had no data. In order for us to undertake a cross comparative analysis of people that have had UFO experiences with people that have had near death experiences, with people that have had out of body experiences, with people that have had remote viewing experiences, people that have had communication with ghosts and spirits and what took place, et cetera, all the different contact modalities. You need data to compare it to. We do have lots of data from near death experiences. We do have lots of data from out of body experiences. And even with shamanic journeys, we have some data from some of the recent studies that are taking place. We're talking about academic research on hallucinogens. Okay. But for the UFO related contact experiencer, what data did we have? Nothing. Okay, nothing. So you could not be able to do these cross comparative analyses. And for us, that's where we need to move forward with. We need to be able to begin to undertake a unified theory of the contact modality. So that was why we did this. Now, in terms of where we're going, no one reads this book. Okay, it's 820 pages. Even people in our board of directors, when I've given them a free copy, I won't mention their names. Oh, I apologize, Ray. I only read my chapter and this other person's chapter, And this goes for everybody. Nobody reads these books, and let alone in academic research studies. Like when you've got, Corey Good's video with a million hits. With a million hits to entertain you, or
because it's so entertaining. You get this story that has no facts behind it.
Exactly. You've got
I just had a.
Yeah, you've got Emery Smith dissecting 200 ETs.
I mean, 3,000
or 3,000 ETs. Meanwhile, you have Dan Burridge, who was the main person that Bill Tompkins substantiated regarding his dissection of ETs. I was sent that in confidence, okay, by a major player in this field. No one I've ever mentioned before, said, Ray, we've just got this sent to us from the estate of Dan Burridge, who was the person that Bill Tompkins substantiated. He said that Dan Burridge worked at Area 51. He's got 4 or 5 PhDs. He's the only one that took care of J-Rod, that little ET in Area 51.
Yeah.
And now we have his autopsy report. We can't find a PhD biochemist. When I met you and Rudy last time in this specific place, okay, you mentioned that you had a boatload of PhDs that are associated with free. Can you find a biochemist to review this dissection? And I said, well, I know of a few. Let me see if they're interested. So I responded back to this person and said, yes, 2 of them will take a look at it. They sent that to me, this whole dissection of J-Rod.
Yeah.
Okay. It was a 60-page report. Okay. One person, these are PhD biochemists, right, wrote 16 pages. The other person wrote 6 pages. Both of them basically said, Ray, you got to be freaking kidding me. Okay, this is like a high school kid, okay, with a horrible SAT scores, attempting to pass off as some type of advanced scientific autopsy report. But everything was totally wrong. Okay, the chemicals that were used.
And just so people know, J-Rod was allegedly one of the survivors, one of the alleged extraterrestrial survivors from the Roswell crash, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Just so people are familiar with when we say J-Rod, who we're talking about, what we're talking about.
Okay. Now, the person that so-called started the secret space program backed up this guy, Dan Burridge. Okay. Yeah. Oh yeah, I knew him. I saw he worked there. Yeah, he took care of J-Rod, right? Well, we just called out your boy as a fraud. So what does that make you, Bill Tompkins, who's now deceased? Okay, the founder of the secret space program. Also, this guy, Emery Smith, so-called dissected 2,000 people. Okay. And meanwhile, he has no PhDs. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. He has no academic background whatsoever. And yet the military intelligence selected him out of thousands of PhDs all over the world to be able to do this work. Please. So anyway, the point that I'm getting at is that someone that's interested in this field, they'd be willing to click on this hit that's got 1 million hits from Emery Smith or Corey Good over Ray Hernandez talking about this academic research study. And that's why this field is totally clueless about what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean it's tough because now it actually is becoming more. It always has kind of been in the subculture of pop culture. UFOs, extraterrestrials, and everything that's kind of tied to it. And now it's becoming more and more popular. The internet hits are ridiculous, and in all reality, other than clickbait, people are going to be. I think at first, its initial thing, people are going to be attracted to the entertainment, to the really high quality production that you have Gaia doing. Where everything looks, it's well produced. I'm not going to say, forget the information. It's the quality of the production seems like to be like a network or professionally done thing. So people are going to look at that and go, wow,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the story is so entertaining. And you know what? If it works as a gateway drug just to get people in until they go until they start questioning, wait a second, hold on a second. So you're telling me all this happened? What how do I know? And hopefully they start questioning more when they see that kind of stuff. I think they will. I think for a lot of people, I hope that it's just kind of a thing that they like a phase or something they go through, and then hopefully they get into the deeper stuff where there's data and there's a lot. There's evidence behind what people are saying and studies done and there's more support to that kind of thing.
Well, I'm in agreement with you. It can be interpreted as an awakening tool, but people need to utilize discernment, in this analysis. Like for example, when Laura Eisenhower, all of a sudden she's involved in a secret space program. Why? Because it's making money. Corey Good is getting thousands and thousands of dollars to appear at these conferences, and yet in one major conference where he was pitted to speak at the same time as one of our members of our board, a very, very well-known member, very highly respected.
You're talking about Richard Dolan?
No, I'm not mentioning any names, okay? This is a member of our board that's highly respected, that does real academic research, okay? When this person was pitted at the same time at a major conference to compete with Corey Good, he had like a full house, over 500 people, 750 people that paid an extra $75 to go see him. Meanwhile, this other person who's credible and reputable, this person barely had 10 people in her room. Okay, so it just tells you where we're at in terms of this field. Now, for this reason, that's why we're doing two projects. We're doing one project that is a documentary. Okay, we have this documentary team that did many of the Star Trek documentaries. One was In Search of Spock, which is on Netflix right now, and the other one is The Captains, that William Shatner was the host, and so they produced both of these documents for. Which is now currently running on Netflix. They're doing this work with us at a pro bono basis. And we have thousands of hours already of film. And what we're trying to do is interview many academics to talk about the same topics that I just talked about today. We're going to be interviewing experiencers of the various contact modalities. We're going to be incorporating data from our research study and interviewing many members of our free research team and board of directors. So what we're trying to introduce is to introduce science and physics into this presentation, hopefully making it an entertaining way. And so now we're able to compete with Gaia. Gaia is basically, it's a metaphysical organization. They are a profit-making organization. That's why they're able to make these slick productions. Meanwhile, a couple of videos that I put out, it was made by a friend, a very dear friend, but this is a person that's just in his living room is putting some of this stuff out, versus a professional crew. So this documentary is going to be professionally run, and it's going to be introducing the audience to the topic of science, consciousness, contact with non-human intelligence, and cosmology, the nature of our universe. Again, presented by a diverse team of scientists, physicists, neuroscientists, experiencers, and researchers. And then that's one project. The second major project is we're doing a volume 2 to our book. Now, volume 2 is not going to be based off of our research study. It's going to be a theoretical book. It's going to answer. It's going to answer that question through hypotheses, because no one knows what the hell is going on. I mean, Edgar Mitchell and every member of our board. Edgar Mitchell once told me, he says, "Ray, we know the equivalent of 1 grain of sand in an entire beach." Okay. And my response to Edgar was, I associated him telling me that the entire beach as like our universe. So my response to him was, and that's just one beach. In other words, and that's just one universe. Okay. So in other words, we know nothing about this phenomenon, and anyone is out there that's acting like they know it all, they're all full of it. Okay. So, however, we are going to take a stab at this in phase 2. We're going to throw out hypotheses, okay, of a lot of brilliant minds, and we're going to ask them, okay, Joe Schmo, Mr. Dr. X, okay, you're 75 years old right now. You're a theoretical physicist from Princeton University. You, Dr. Claude Swanson, you've put out these various books on the synchronization of our universe. You have an interest in the paranormal. All right, Claude, what the fuck is going on? Okay.
So basically, you're basically going to speculate wildly, which is perfectly
Correct.
Okay. We need that, but
Exactly.
it'll be based on something, and you'll clearly be labeling it as speculation.
Exactly. Like Claude Swanson, as I said before, this guy's got a PhD in physics from Princeton, the university that Einstein taught after he came over from Germany. Okay. Probably one of the top 2 or 3 physics universities in the world. Okay. Claude, for the last 30 years, has been working on consciousness and the contact modalities, how it's all interrelated. Claude is in his
I was going to say his book on energy and chi and all that kind of stuff is absolutely amazing. It's a textbook. It's a college textbook.
He's an academic. It's an academic. Okay. So he's writing a chapter in our book. Say, okay, Claude, you're 75 years old. Okay. You're going to die 6 months from now. This is what I told everybody. You're going to die terrible. 6 months from now. Okay. I want you to leave a legacy for humanity. Okay. Tell us what the fuck is inside your mind. What the hell is going on? How do you explain the relationship between consciousness, our cosmology, and contact with non-human intelligence via the contact modalities? How do you explain that? Now, as a background to your audience members, okay, when we're talking about the topic of consciousness, first of all, in mainstream materialist consciousness research is mainly focused on the brain. Consciousness starts and ends with the brain. Okay. Then you have a small group of individuals that understand that consciousness is non-local, that consciousness is independent of the brain. Okay. However, both groups, the local and the non-local, researchers of consciousness, they rarely, if at all, bring into that conversation the topic of non-human intelligence. Okay. For example, Dean Radin. We have an interview with him, and hopefully we can release it in our documentary, at least parts of it, okay? He says that our organization, the research paradigm that we have in our organization, that of what we want to do, is where IONS, the Institute for Noetic Sciences, needs to go to. He said it's where the Parapsychological Association needs to move forward to, okay? But
that's great.
Yeah, no, but because
No, I was going to say real quick because I've read his books and his books are awesome. Dean Radin, and I actually tried to reach out to him before, in social networking and things like that about this subject, because I was fascinated to hear what he would have to say, because obviously my own experiences in CE5 and whatever, I had wanted to hear his feedback on that. So that I'd love to see that.
Well, James, after our interview, I'm going to send it to your personal email and to Frank, under the condition that you don't circulate it. Okay,
that's fine.
The hour-and-a-half interview that we did with Dean Radin. Okay, and it really is it's paradigm busting. It's supporting where we're going with this. Okay, and so we asked that question to numerous individuals. Most of them are academics. One person that both of you know is Dr. Joseph Burks. Okay, because
Joseph Burks, MD. He corrected me. He corrected me.
Joseph Burks, MD. Okay, and Joseph has his own particular hypotheses of what might be going on, but he never wrote it out. Okay, it was just in our conversations that he was explaining some of this, of what he thinks is behind this phenomenon. I said, Joe, well, you just self-nominated yourself to write a chapter in our book. Okay, because what I want you to do is to put it down in writing for the first time, the many conversations that we've had. Okay,
right? Are you talking about the virtual experience?
Yes, correct.
Okay,
correct.
Let me give you a side note on that, because I was actually speaking with a friend.
Yeah.
Who had is this my friend is actually a scientist working on the stuff in the background. Some people know who he is, but
that's just one component, the virtual.
Exactly. That's just one piece of what's going on. All this stuff. There's
but
there is a physical.
That's just one piece of his theory. His theory is multi-layered. That's just one layer.
Yeah. And but it was funny that somebody had confirmed to me that Jacques Vallée also, even in cases that he's studying at this moment, seems to be kind of evident. So when I brought that the virtual experience hypothesis or modality to them, they were basically saying, Jacques Vallée has come to find the same thing as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. That and I wish I could get him to write a chapter for a book.
Get it. Try.
Yeah. But we don't have. But we're having someone close. We're having Brent Rains, who's been in the field of ufology for more than 45 years, since he was a teenager. And he is writing a book about John Keel. Okay. And so, Brent is writing another chapter, not only about John Keel, but about John Keel, Jacques Vallée, Bernhard, is it Schwartz? PhD psychologists who again had these non-local consciousness aspect of the UFO contact phenomenon. Very, very similar. The theories among the three, but it's quite different from each other. But what holds them together is that consciousness is involved, the paranormal is involved, and the non-extraterrestrial hypotheses mixed with the paranormal is involved. So that's where our book is heading towards. We have Dr. Rudy Shields, Dr. John Klimo, who's one of the world's leading academics on the paranormal. He was a tenured professor for 40 years. And most of his research and writings was on the paranormal. This is Dr. John Klimo. So he's writing a chapter for a book. Edgar, before he died, he had agreed to publish his, what I call his magnum opus, major.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
On consciousness and the quantum hologram. That's going to be in our book. So, I mean, this book is a paradigm-busting book, because it's going to establish a theoretical mindset of how to approach the topic of UFO from a theoretical perspective. Now, again,
when do you think that might see the light of day?
Probably the summer of this coming year.
Awesome.
Yeah, and again, we're not saying that anyone has the answers here. These are just hypotheses. But again, hypotheses from brilliant individuals.
Yeah.
We're not talking Laura Eisenhower talking about, her experience with reptilians here. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotcha. We're coming to the end of the show over here, just because, we've got a lot to do. This has been a fantastic discussion, Ray. I definitely we're gonna have some private talk soon. But But thank you so much for coming on. I do have one question for you.
Yes, sir.
It's kind of a side subject. You do not have to answer this. I understand if you do not want to go there. But what is the rumor with that TTSA wanted to see your database or something along those lines? If you want to answer that, otherwise no.
Yeah, no. I think Grant got it wrong when I told it to him.
Okay, yeah.
I could talk about it. What happened was that we had a PhD neuroscientist that was a member of our board of directors and one of the chairs of our research study for about 2.5 years, Dr. Bob Davis. Okay. And he's no longer associated with Free, but he was an integral component for many, many years. And Bob is a retired professor of neuroscience. He got a PhD from Ohio State, and he taught in upstate New York at one of the SUNYs. I don't know whether it was SUNY Binghamton or.
I wonder if it was SUNY Albany, where Professor Kevin Knuth is.
I forgot which one. No, I don't think it was Albany. Okay, but it was one of the SUNYs. Okay, so we're talking about a real deal academic professor here. Okay, and so anyway, he eventually became interested in what we were doing because he had written a book about UFOs, saying that basically that ufology has given us very, very little over 70 years. Okay. And that we need to be able to establish scientific research study instead of just what had been going on, but really to put in a lot of money to study this scientifically. And so I had a phone call with him, and I told him, I said, Bob, this is so much more than nuts and bolts ufology, And then over many months, I would give him a lot of materials to read. And he became totally fascinated. So then at a certain point where he became interested, I said, would you like to join us? And he joined us. So anyway, he was working with us for over 2.5 years. He made tremendous contributions to what we were doing. He really was a foundation together with Dr. John Klimo, and myself, towards for this research study. So what had happened was that he didn't let me know, but he reached out to Tom DeLong. Okay, and so Tom DeLong then set up a time to discuss with us. Okay, now with me, my position was that while I don't agree at all with Tom DeLong's statements that he made in the Jimmy Church radio interview, where he said, we need to squash the UFOs like bugs.
He's kind of a little off the rails on that.
He was. Yeah, and we need to throw nuclear bombs out in outer space to squash them like bugs, and I said, this guy's freaking crazy, and then I realized in his interview that he has never had an experience, and all he did was just to read UFO books, and naturally, if you read 4 of David Jacobs' books,
that's what you're gonna get. Yeah,
that's what you're gonna get, and so and plus there was never any academic research on the UFO contact phenomenon with non-human intelligence. We're talking about from the experiencer side. There have been a lot of books on Roswell, Rendlesham Forest, and a lot of cases, but from the experiencer side, nothing. Okay, so and so then we're on the phone call with us, and this guy was telling to us that he's going to be raising millions of dollars for this, millions of dollars for that, million for that, and he says, but he's got no one that's working on the experiencer side to do research on the experiencer, and that the academics and Free that eventually he can pay for our research. Okay.
Yeah.
And so he said, and you, Ray, you don't have to work anymore, because I'm a tax attorney. He says, you don't have to work anymore. We can pay for it. Okay. And so it's not like he wanted to buy the data, but he said, basically, you can come and work for us. Now, I always had the position that the research that we were doing has to be totally independent. Yeah. It cannot be manipulated from any outside source or used for any outside, agenda. The data will speak for itself. If it came out that it was negative, then that's what it is. If it came out that it was this way, it was that way, And that's how everyone in our organization approached this. Okay, that let the data speak for itself. So at that point, I interjected myself and I told him, I said, we're not interested in associating with you because it appears like you have your own personal agenda. I told him, your own personal mindset of how you view this phenomenon, and it's not what our data is revealing. Our data shows the complete opposite. Okay, so we're not here to work with any outside organization, and we're here to approach this in an academic and unbiased way to continue doing this research, and that also our approach is not materialist. That we're really focusing on the consciousness aspect of it, and that's how we left it. Okay,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and so it wasn't like he was trying to buy
Yeah.
our data. It was a little bit more complicated than that.
Yeah, I appreciate you for clearing that up. Because I've been wondering about that since I first heard it mentioned that there was any. It's surprising too. I mean, you gotta give yourself some credit for that. That Tom DeLonge was interested in your work. And of course, Tom DeLonge. I'm optimist that he's doing what he thinks is right. I don't think that he's trying to be malicious with the way he perceives this. I think that, if anything, he's, of course, like, again, he didn't have his own experience. So he's basing a lot of this other stuff on theories of other people and allegedly what information he's being fed through his different contacts. But again, you have different people being fed information and they're coming out with these different stories. You have Tom DeLonge, who has all these insiders allegedly. Well, he does have them, and he's kind of has this negative spin on the phenomenon that it's a bad thing for us. And then you have Dr. Greer, who has all the he has insiders as well, and he has a completely different story. Regardless of Dr. Greer's persona and all that, he has a different message.
Yeah.
Even though they probably have carryover on their insiders, they're probably speaking to some of the same people.
Yeah, but for both groups, the key here is that the basic statistical research was never done.
Oh no, not at all.
And that's why if you speak to enough people that you associate with, you're going to be getting certain information. As I said, if I hang out with David Jacobs, for the next 3 years, I'm going to be meeting a whole lot of people that he associates with that have that perspective. If I hang out with Stephen Greer, for 3 years, I'm going to be introduced to people that have, his perspective. But again, that's not academic research. Academic research needs to be totally independent. It has to be done under an academic research methodology. For example, Dr. John Klimo, who taught qualitative research methodology for over 40 years. Okay, he was the chair of our academic research study. Okay, he's the guy that actually taught academic research at the graduate level for master's and PhD students. He was in charge of it, and we had a whole team of people that were PhDs that took our research methodology at a graduate level. I had a year and a half of statistics. These are the people that were involved in developing this. So, just hanging around with Stephen Greer or David Jacobs, that's not academic research, or Tom DeLonge. And that's where we're at. It has to be grounded in science and academics.
Yeah, you got to go out. You got to do the work. You got to get the data, and you got to get it from more than just a few dozen people. What you guys did, 3,200 plus respondents. That's a lot of data.
Yeah, from over 100 countries.
Yeah,
and we did it in multiple languages, and in the different languages, we still get the same result. Actually, in Spanish, it's even more of a transformation and more positive. The experiences.
Got it.
Yeah.
Ray, do you have anything else for us? We're just about ready to wrap up here.
No, it's just that our documentary will probably take about another year to develop. Our Volume 2 book is going to be put out in the summer of next year. Our website is experiencer.org. We have two websites. The other website is consciousnessandcontact.org. And then if anyone wants to send me an email, and if you want to receive a copy of chapter 1, which is the main chapter of our book, and I'm still going to send it out to you for free, send us an email to info@experiencer.org, info@experiencer.org. And myself, Mary Rodwell, and Dr. Rudy Shields have been invited to speak at several major UFO conferences. The first one is UFO MegaCon, and that's going to be in March of this year, 2019, UFO MegaCon. We were also invited to speak at Contact in the Desert, and that's the first week of June. And all three of us will be there. And the first time at the UFO MegaCon conference, which is going to be held in Las Vegas, where all three of us are going to be together. And I was also invited to speak at the Arkansas UFO conference, and that is in May of 2019. And the lady from Dolores Cannon's Press, her daughter, I forgot the formal name of the company, is interested in publishing a smaller, revised version of Free's research and of our theoretical book. We're going to be merging them both together, putting it under 250 pages, and reading it and presenting it so the masses, the non-academic audience, is able to understand what we're doing.
That's good. That's a good idea.
Well, this was fantastic, Ray. I certainly appreciate you coming on with us. We covered everything that we were looking to cover. And James, you got anything else?
Of course I do, but we gotta cut it. We're coming up on 2 hours. Ray, I could probably talk to you for days and days and days, nonstop. This has been fascinating.
And we have not spoken about my experiences, which is great.
Oh,
yeah, I appreciate that to an extent, because for me too, I like to focus on the work and the data and stuff like that, and communicating that, because our own experiences are kind of like impetuses for ourselves to kind of get involved and take this on. And they can be very personal as well. I understand that.
Yeah, I don't mind talking about it in the proper form, but what it does, it just takes up a lot of time, talking about this.
Yeah,
and if you mix it with the data, you're gonna get comments from people saying, "This guy's a quack. Yeah. He's making this up. How could this have happened?"
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's that's something I battle with when the work I'm doing is that I don't put my own stuff out there like that. I just focus on the work.
Yeah.
And but hope we'll definitely have you on again, especially
when the book is ready. When the book is ready, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
And
also hang around after you stop the recording, and we can continue to chat.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get right to that. Let's wrap it up. Thanks everybody for joining in. First Christmas present. I think you got a good one. We got more on the way. Ray, thanks so very much again. Everybody have a great week, and we will see you next week with our Twitter Circle Roundtable featuring the one and only Ryan from Post Disclosure World. Have a good night, everybody. Bye-bye now.
Take care.